Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to Rate Don't Hate. It's me again, Guy. As I said last week, we're going to be rotating guests, and I have the man that Dave Hendrick has dubbed the machine over on AI, Stephen Smith. It's finally nice to speak to you because so many messages between us, sorting and start articles to get out and stuff like that. But it's nice to talk to you, Stephen. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Glad to be on something that doesn't require me to write and muck up my hands endlessly. So, yeah.
That's why I went into this gig. It's much easier to just chat.
Absolutely. Well,
absolutely.
I wish it was after a better game. That's
true. I've got two guests who have bottled their first appearance. But no, if it was that big mean to do, it would have been banned long ago. But we'll get into the game. I mean, as we usually do. Well, firstly, I'll ask you this because I asked Garrett last week. When rating players, how do you look at it? I mean, do you start from like a 6 or do you start from a 5 and then work your way up or down? Because I think that's kind of important when you are going through ratings. And obviously you write on the site doing ratings most games as well.
Well, I usually start as a base as a 6. I think 6 is an average game. You've not been great. You've not been bad. You've kind of just floated through the game and you've been unspectacular. So if you dip below that, I'm not liking it. I tell you what, the first ever 3 I've administered, probably the least rating was from yesterday, and I think we know who that was.
And it wasn't Nat Phillips. It was
it wasn't far off actually, but
that's harsh. But yeah, I think with red cards you have to take off a good few points as we'll get to. But yeah, it's a disappointing day because I have rules myself. When someone gets a hat trick, it's an automatic 10, and maybe a red card. You'll see what my ruling is once we get to it. But it wasn't a pretty home debut for Darwin, that's for sure. But we'll start off with the boring one. That's Alisson. He didn't have loads to do. He couldn't really do much for the goal. I just went with a 6 myself.
Well, this is the thing. Like so many of our players, the standard's now so high, it's hard to judge because literally it's the smallest things that they get critiqued on because quite simply we have so much of the ball. It's almost like the defensive players can make one mistake and it can be seen as like a bad performance. Whereas they're so inactive in their actual defensive duties across so many games, we'll target like one mistake. And I think Sky are the worst for that, where they'll do a replay of one thing over and over, but it'll just be that one thing they've done wrong. And I think
absolutely.
They're guilty of their own brilliance at times, and sometimes you just have to. I mean, I've not been too downhearted about the result because I tried to think back to when we lost 6-1 to Stoke and the dark days of Brendan and Hodgson before that, and it's 2 points from 6. But if this is our blip and we get 10 points, 10 games in, and we've got 7 wins and 3 draws, or 7 wins and 2 draws and a loss, if this is our blip, maybe this is what we need, and are ridiculous. So
yeah.
Going back to Alisson did nothing in terms of what a normal keeper would do, because the finish from Zaha is brilliant.
Absolutely.
He can do nothing more than that. I mean, it's his standing. You speak about the levels they set. That's why Virgil has let him take the shot. Virgil has opened that avenue to go, because I think he did it to Son last season or the season before, where he just like backed off and go, well, I'm backing my keeper. Now, if he had Pickford behind him, you know he's going in for that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But because Alisson is there, he's backing his keeper to basically save Nat Phillips. So, for me, Alisson, I'll just double check what I gave him, but I think, I might have gone a 6.5.
And this is the thing, we have to decide, are you going 6 or 7 for the podcast?
I'm going to go 7 because I just don't think he's had a bad game.
Yeah.
He just has not had a bad game. He's seen a lot of the ball, but it's from his own players where they've used him as that sweeper keeper. But in terms of what he's actually done in the command of his area, I mean, the way he came out at Zaha at the one-on-one, that's probably him in a nutshell, that he can just take that away from him. He can, and that's why Virgil allowed him to take that shot initially for the goal, because he knows that Alisson can just stop people. But if you do get through and you're a player of ability, even though it's oftentimes sporadic with Zaha, he has that ability to find the bottom corner, and he has found the bottom corner. So I would go for a 7 for Alisson.
Yeah, no blame for him, absolutely. I think his kicking out from the back was good whenever they troubled. I think most of them were caught offside, but when they did breach it, he swept up apart from the goal. So yeah, I went with a 6, just similarly to you. I don't think he had loads to do, but he was pretty just clean in what he had to do, and the goal was, well, there was a list of people at fault and he wasn't on it. But moving on then to more interesting people. Andy Robertson. Stephen, it's a weird one with Robertson because he was so flawless probably for the first 3 years of his Liverpool career, and now I don't know if I'm judging him on his past performances or am I judging him compared to a normal left-back, like let's say an Aaron Cresswell, let's say someone like that. Where when I watch him now, it just feels like something's off, but I don't know if that's to his own standard or to normal left-back standards, if you get what I mean.
People know how to play him. They've watched game after game after game, and they know how to play him. So literally, they'll double up on the man ahead of him, which is Diaz, and they know that he just has to go square. And so you take away that ability. He's not got Thiago on that left-hand side of midfield. He's playing it inside to someone where he's not going to receive an adequate ball back. So Milner had a good, opening section, but he's not going to open up the angles for him for Robertson to give a ball inside and then receive it on the run. I mean, he requires so much to be perfect in my eyes. He needs a Jota-type centre-forward, and he needs a Thiago to give that through ball to him. So he needs that hockey assist from Thiago in order to get the assist himself. So I think you can literally shut him down. And, in terms of effort, brilliant. In terms of up and down, brilliant. But we need, they're our wingers. They're not our fullbacks. In transition, they are our wingers. And so teams just know how to play us. And it's a frustration because I saw Crystal Palace against Arsenal and they played a different way. They played a more expansive game, whereas with us, they just want to shut us down. Vieira even said it in his pre-game. I'm putting 5. I'm going to put 5 and I'm going to shut down avenues. There was just so many players in that final third that were Palace swarming us and cutting out everything, that Andy Robertson has not got that Trent Alexander ability to switch his style of play. Well, if I can't get the cross in, that Trent may pull out a crossfield ball or give a drill pass in between the lines. Whereas with Robbo, you're literally forcing him square. And who is he forcing it square to? Milner. And then it all breaks down. And we have to go backwards to Virgil, and then we have to go swing over the other side. So when we take away a controller of Thiago or Naby, it just, and also Mane, I suppose, to a degree, you take away so much of what allows Robbo to be Robbo, because he can't beat a player head on, and he can't ping a ball drilled into people's feet like Trent. And so he's guilty of his limitations, but, he's still great. But last night, he couldn't become the player we needed him to be. Certainly when Núñez was surrounded and getting hounded and pushed about the place.
Yeah, I thought it was a tough game for him as well. I mean, the only thing that overshadowed him was Simicast's performance when he came on. Somehow was worse. But we'll get to the subs somehow. But yeah, Robbo, I think he's in a bit of a bad... he's probably bad, to be fair. I went with a 4 myself. I mean, it's just... Nothing was clicking, and I think you make a good point about him missing Thiago and probably Mane, especially Mane as well, because if you think of the left-hand side, our most successful period under Klopp, it's been so defined that it was Robertson, Gini and Mane on the left. And we've seen the change there. Thiago and Naby rotate the left now. Diaz took over that since January. I think the only constant partnership he's had is with Van Dijk. And yeah, it's been a lot of change on the left, whereas the right, it's as much as the debate is there, it's still Trent, Henderson, Salah for 90% of the games. So yeah, there's been a lot of change there, and I think you can see it, especially in Robertson's performances. I went with a 4. What are you going with?
See, I went with a 6, but that was just purely down to his effort because it was non-stop. So it could have easily dropped to a 5, but it wasn't his fault. The fact, in my mind, Milner had such limitations and they were doubling up on Diaz, so he had nowhere to send the ball. So he was struggling to get into certain areas because Palace was so well drilled. I mean, if I'm setting up a team against Liverpool last night, I'm closing off line, Robbo's not getting there. I'm closing off the ball or putting 2 tight next to Diaz, and I'm allowing that ball into Milner. Milner's not going to be able to find that first-time pass. So then you shut off the avenue of which Robbo does best, to receive that second ball and then gallop down the line and put in a first-time cross. Now, it doesn't matter where that cross goes because he's not getting there. So it was just... It's a thing because we have to be tactically able to overcome it. And we don't have enough players of enough quality. We need so many parts to be on point because people like Robbo are just reliant on others. They really are.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think the Palace performance was much better than the Fulham one. I think everyone would agree with that. But there was something still not clicking. I think we'll probably get through it as we get through the right-hand side of the team. But I think in the first half, the right-hand side of the team wasn't at its best by any means, but it looked quite fluent. Whereas the left-hand side, they had 2 right-backs playing in a back 5. So they obviously saw that as kind of somewhere to just lock down. Doucouré, their new signing, looked quite good in that regard. And I think they had Schlupp, who's very versatile. You can basically cover any part of the pitch. They just seem to know who to target and where to limit us. And I'd probably say the left-hand side, until we went down to 10 men and Diaz went, I will do everything. But yeah, it was just an odd game. But I think maybe a connection here is the next player we've got to talk about, and that's Nat Phillips. And I mentioned, we've both mentioned Van Dijk there, and we haven't rated him yet. But a big part of the way we play is the centre-backs playing out from the back. Now, Nat tried, to be fair to him, but he's not Joel Matip, he's not Joe Gomez, and he's not Ibu Konate. And you could see, basically, they pressed Van Dijk, they pressed Fabinho, they made Nat Phillips have the ball. And the way he played out from the back, it was just impossible for us to play our natural game. And it's a hard one because we don't know how fit Gomez was, but he obviously came on for 35 odd mins. But I can't blame Nat Phillips, but just in the cold heart of ratings, I mean, what did I go with? Where's my spreadsheet? I went with a 4 for Nat, but I feel like it's not his fault just because he's very ill-suited to the way we play.
I went with a 4 as well because, yep, they wanted him to have the ball, and then they would open up the left-hand channel, and he played a couple of nice crossfield balls to Robbo, but it felt like that was orchestrated, like that's where they want it to go. They didn't want him to play it to Trent. They didn't want him to play it to Mo. They were more than happy. So, it looked nice, but every time it happened, I thought, well, that's the side we're not getting any joy. And it just felt like if we had a Naby there, then it would change every aspect of what was going on, because they wanted the ball to be on Milner's side of the pitch. They wanted it to be on Robbo's side of the pitch because they're not incisive players. They're reactionary to, and they want it to be 100 miles an hour. That you saw Milner with that opening chance. They want it to be 100 miles an hour, and they need it to be in front of them, and they need to react to what's going on around them. But the creation has to come from other people. So getting back to Nat, he's just not a Liverpool player. He's a Liverpool player in a Roy Hodgson team. He's Harry Maguire, who does not want to be too far away from the 18-yard box. When it was in the air, he was there to head it, and it was fine. But he looked panicked. He looked, the stuff he was launching himself into in the second half, it was cringy because it was so uncontrolled, and it was poor by Klopp. I don't know about this Henderson injury, but quite simply, Henderson goes into the 6, and you just start with Fab at the back.
Yeah.
If Gomez isn't fit, he shouldn't be on the bench. Gomez looked absolutely fine. And I think Dave said it in Raw. Start him. Start your best team. And if he has to come off after 45, we've at least killed the pressure, because he would have dealt with Zaha. There would have been no issue. There would have been no raising your hand because, oh, Christ, he's 10 yards past me, and in about a second he's going to be 20 yards past me. We just would have dealt with it. I think it was more a case of he probably felt that Edouard or Mateta were going to start, and maybe he didn't bank on Zaha pinning himself to, Nat's shoulder, which he did, because you would. You wouldn't, Lukaku wouldn't go near Van Dijk against Chelsea last year. Zaha's going to be all over Nat Phillips. It's all he's going to want to do. And there wasn't many opportunities in behind, but it just felt like Van Dijk was having to shepherd the whole of our half at times. He was looking left, looking right. He was wondering what to do, because quite simply, he was having to babysit someone that just, not just a weird fit, it's just the most wrong fit for our way of football. Nat Phillips just isn't a 2022 Liverpool centre-half.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think, and even if you look at the time, Nat and Reece were the centre-backs, we just didn't play like we usually do, whereas last night, halfway line, all game, we couldn't do that when it was the two weaker centre-backs, but maybe Klopp, in retrospect, probably would have played Gomez or risked it, or he certainly would have tweaked the line and dropped them deeper, because Zaha, every time, and it was very limited the amount of times they got forward, but when they did get forward, they targeted him, and it basically worked every time. They kept on side.
But then you say drop the line, so that means you're going to give more space for James Milner to cover. So then you have that issue. So if Henderson was fit, Henderson starts in the 6, you drop Fab in.
Yeah. No, I actually agree. I agree.
It's the lesser of two evils. You end up with this Milderson thing, but I want to know what's happening with Naby, because how he doesn't come into this game, I don't know. I don't know.
It's not a good sign, is it? He's been back in training just after the Fulham game by most accounts, and he can't start. I know Milner and Elliott came on in the Fulham game and did well, but it's just odd, and he didn't even come on as a sub. It's just really odd. It's really odd, but another week, another Monday game, so hopefully he's fit and ready for United, because albeit they are dreadful, we need him to be fit. We don't need to equalise their team with the amount of players we can play. But we'll move on from that because I don't want to stick on him. I think most people understand. Let's be honest, he was at fault at the goal. Fabinho lost a tackle basically on the edge of their box, but in the corner.
Yeah.
The way we play, that should be a non-factor. Yeah, the tackle was bad, but that's an easy offside to play. But I don't want to stick on him. So you went with a 4 for that. Now, Trent and Van Dijk, I think Trent in the first half, I think I went 6 with both of these. Let me have a look. No, I went with a 5 for Van Dijk. But a 6 for Trent and a 5 for Van Dijk. Trent tried his best in the first half. Second half, I think the endless crosses came in, and that's tend to be how we go to panic stations. We overly cross. Whereas Van Dijk, again, you mentioned it there, he had a lot on his plate. It was a tough situation playing with an ill-fitting partner. But he did slow down on the goal. I'm not blaming him, but maybe I wanted him to just maybe slide. Well, I've never seen Van Dijk slide tackle, actually. Maybe just try and take a tackle. I've just knocked him down there because he probably could have done a smidge more. But as we said, I think Nat, Fabinho, then maybe Van Dijk in the order there. But yeah, Trent, can't really blame him, but panicky, overly cross, and Van Dijk, not too much in his game. He was pressed, so he couldn't really do his long diagonals to Trent or Salah. So just a quiet game, but we did concede a sloppy goal.
See, I'd go a 6 for Van Dijk and a 6 for Trent.
Yeah.
With Van Dijk, he's had to cover 40, 50 yards. I mean, Zaha sees him coming. He sees him all day long. He's on his right foot already. He's already started to open up. If Van Dijk goes to ground, Zaha, if nothing else, he's great ball at feet. Close control. He just opens up the whole of the goal. So Van Dijk has had to make that decision. If it isn't bang in the corner, then Alisson gets it. And then we're saying how masterful, and these are the fine lines, we say how masterful that was by Van Dijk to read the situation and allow that shot to happen. So
true.
It's the fine lines because it's not his error. And how many other centre-halves would have even got to that position where he was within, a yard or two of Zaha to at least put him off? It's just a killer finish.
It is to be fair. But I think maybe the Nat Phillips is just wearing off on him in my rating. But I realised I've not been going through the subscribers ratings there. I'll go through the interesting ones because most of them are in the 6s. Robertson got a 4.8, which, yeah, I can kind of see why. I went with a 4 myself, so kind of in between both of us there. And Nat got a 3.4 from subscribers. Maybe a tad harsh because you just can't blame the lad, but so be it. It was a messy performance, and the other lads got.
You say you can't blame the lad. We have VAR. Why are you stopping to put your arm up?
True.
So you can blame you blame Klopp for putting him in that situation, but this is a professional footballer that's paid £30,000 a week.
True.
Why are you putting your hand up? VAR sorts that later. Get your head down, and at least, because I tell you what, if Van Dijk sees him barreling towards the penalty spot, maybe he does make the challenge to at least stop the shot. At that point, maybe Nat, in that extra second or so, has got back in position. We know he's slow, but he creates uncertainty in Zaha if he just sprints flat out. Van Dijk didn't hesitate. As soon as Zaha was gone, Van Dijk was on his bike, gone. Didn't look over his shoulder at the linesman, just went. Nat stopped because he knew he wouldn't get there. He puts his hand up. Why? It is his fault what he did on the pitch. It's Klopp's fault for putting him there.
Yeah, I agree. Moving into the midfield then. It's an odd one because I think the Fulham game, it was clearly the midfield that was the biggest issue in the game. Whereas in this one, it's not the ideal midfield, but I don't think we can blame them for the loss. For the loss, it feels like a loss for the draw. Whereas I'll do them collectively. I mean, Fabinho, I went with a 6. weak tackle, but in the overall picture of the game, I thought he was mostly fine, if not quite good. Milner, I went with a 6 as well. It was just a Milner performance. He tired after a little while and got subbed off. And then Elliott's probably the standout one. I went with a 7 for him. Just a really nice, clean performance. I think he may be tired in the second half, but in the first half, he connected well. We mentioned already the right-hand side was the one clicking, and I thought he was a part of that. I think he has a good relationship with Trent and Mo, and I think he was connecting the game quite well, whereas Milner just kind of did Milner things, and as I said with Fabinho, he was mostly all right.
All three of them have limitations. Fabinho was a 6 for me, and as I said beforehand, that's a neither good nor bad performance. But he started well, he was into challenges, he was positionally fine, but after the goal, you could sense that he was drifting over to Nat's side because he wanted to stop that through ball. You could sense that there was too much confliction in his mind as to where to be, because it was, again, two adults in Van Dijk and Fabinho having to babysit Nat. So Fabinho's post-goal performance, I think, was affected by an inability of Nat to defend. So Fabinho was kind of, he's got a kid one side and he's got, an old man. He's nearly as old as me, Milner. There's so many limitations in that, because as good as Harvey was, they just surrounded him. He was bright, he was popping, he was pressing, he was getting back, he was smart in ball retention, and he was looking to create on the ball. But it felt like there was about 6 Palace players surrounding that trio of Trent, Mo, and Harvey. So there was nowhere for the ball to go. And because we're now not playing the, false 9 in Darwin, we then lose that, dropping in and trying to make something happen, and
the connection.
It's all new. So
yeah.
Fabinho has a new centre half one side. He's got a new left midfielder, and he's got a new right midfielder, and he's got a new centre forward. So, where we criticised Bobby last week because he didn't need to drop him because we had all the ball against Fulham, all of a sudden the entire surrounding of Fabinho has changed, and he's the adult trying to hold it together. And then we were changing systems, changing personnel, and he was the ever present in that middle that was trying to hold it together. And I feel for Fabinho at the moment because he's brilliant, and we're not helping him by not addressing what we need to do, and that's to add more quality in that department, because otherwise Milner can't be starting games. It just, he had a good opening 10 minutes, but it's other people that are dragging certain players down. If Joe Gomez starts that game, Van Dijk isn't a 6. If Naby starts that game, Fabinho isn't a 6, because they need certain players around them in order for the structure to work.
The dependability of experienced players. Not overly experienced like Milner, but yeah, I get what you mean, yeah.
Well, Milner's got no finesse. He's got no finesse. He's got more drive, and he's probably more tactically astute than, say, if you put Henderson on the left. But he's not going to pick that pass. He's not going to be incisive. He's going to be reactionary to what's going on around him. But he's not going to create that chaos with his passing. And so you just have
it's chalk and cheese with Thiago, isn't it?
Yeah. But again, you've got Naby. Where's Naby? You can put Naby into that team, and it changes the performance of Fab. It changes the performance of Robbo. It changes probably the performance of Darwin, because we are more incisive from the midfield area, and we give more than just flinging balls in from wide positions, which is what we ended up doing. So, yeah. So Fab was a 6. Milner, he was a 5 because he just became an afterthought after 15 minutes. You know, good beard, but
should have scored as well. To be fair,
yeah. Harvey was really good, but if we're relying on Harvey Elliott, then there's bigger problems than anything. And then you read about the whole, Núñez saga to Wolves, and it just makes it even worse. Harvey Elliott should be the understudy in the right centre midfield role to a senior, established midfielder.
Yeah.
That, we wanted Tchouaméni, he was going to play there. We wanted Bellingham, I don't know what's happening there. We wanted Barrea. We have to look beyond the players that we can't get. The position is the position of need. The name should be irrelevant. There should just be a list of 5, and you just work down the list. When we didn't get Zielinski, we went and got Wijnaldum. When we didn't get who was the lad at Dortmund before we went and got Mo?
Götze or Brand?
Goetze. So we wanted Goetze, didn't get Goetze, went and got Mo. The position is the requirement. The name is completely irrelevant because we just keep on filtering down that list until that position filled. We don't just stop at number 3 and go, well, we tried our best. There's certain areas of the team where we can't upgrade. At centre-half, say Kanate did a Mamadou Sakho and just lost all the trust of Klopp, and we had to get rid of Kanate. We wouldn't successfully be able to upgrade that position in world football without looking at Marquinhos, or I think that might be about it. In midfield, there's dozens. There's dozens of players that would improve us.
Thing is, I was even looking at Eze from Palace. I was like, he'd probably start for us.
He would. There's just Bruno Guimaraes, brilliant. You look at Onana, who's gone to Everton. We take him immediately. If Wolves are getting Núñez, how are we missing this step? Because is it a Julian Ward thing where we've put so much into something that's not going to happen, where we've done a United thing where we might just end up getting no one because we put all our eggs in one basket?
That is a worry. I think the only thing we don't play out in public like United, but I suppose we're not dealing with Barcelona either, but it is a worry. It is a worry. I think the question marks are there. We have all the injuries there. Henderson, whether he's dropped or he was injured, it was a justified dropping if he was dropped. You can't rely, even if he's rewarding Milner's impact in the Fulham game. We even saw last season, he can only play 1 game a week, and that's one too many. The season will get busier. We won't have this Monday crack for much longer, thankfully. But it's just odd, and that is the one position. What was your rating for Harvey?
Harvey was 7.
Yeah.
Because, again, there was no end product. And that's not his fault, because every time he got into good situations, they were so well drilled in shutting him down, there was nowhere to go. And so he's still, they're all starting out together. Darwin starting out, Harvey starting out, so it's a 7, but it's a good 7.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it looks like the listeners do too. They've gone with a 6.1 for Fabinho, a 5.2 for Milner, and a 7.3 for Harvey. So basically all bang on with the listeners there. Now we'll do two of the forwards together, because we do have to focus on Darwin on his own for multiple reasons. Salah, I thought he was one of the brighter spots in the first half, and then I think he kind of got lost a bit when we just went for, we need to cross the ball every time we go forward. So I believe I went with a 6. I went with a 6, yeah. Bright spots, but maybe not enough overall to really advance up in the ratings for myself. What did you think of Mo?
I had Mo as a 6.
Yeah.
His first touch was insane. His close control, his ability to kill the ball. Some balls shouldn't be controlled in that way. But again, it would have been the Vieira approach. If Salah's on the ball, surround him. Surround him. And I need a more fluid system. You know, I see City the past 2 years when they haven't really played with a striker, where you've had the entire front three able to just move across and switch positions. I'm desperate for us to play a system that allows Mo more freedom from a central position, but still to go out wide. You know, in an ideal scenario, a 4-2-3-1 where we had Fab and Thiago, where we had a 10 that can drift wide and switch in and out with Mo, because Mo just gets surrounded. And, you know, season 1, he always had space because teams would go toe-to-toe with us. So we need to find a way to get the best out of Mo, and to just leave him on the outside with the odd half chance a few times a game just isn't working. You know, it hasn't been working since the turn of the year, because certain areas they just shut down. They just shut us down. I can't see how Mo could have impacted the game better, because Darwin wasn't at the races at all. And it's a huge worry when Mo's just being shepherded into areas where he just has to give the ball back to, you know, either Trent or Harvey and start again.
Yeah,
I want to see Mo in a central position. I'd love to see him off a striker. I'd love to see him. What are you going to do now, defenders? You know, almost put them into a free roll. You're telling me that Thiago and Fab, when we have 65% of the ball, can't control the game, or Fab and Fab and Naby can't control the game, and then we go get, you know, a Serge Gnabry just to play out there, and then have them two dovetailing in and out. You know, I'd love a midfielder, because I think we're going to stick with a 4-3-3, which goes to a hybrid where, you know, that one of them goes into the 10. But I'd just love us to set up and get like a Bruno type player, or to play in that 10, and then he could switch in and out, or a Gnabry where we just had that, right, you're going to play wide, and when Mo goes out, you come in. And we just need to get more out of Mo. We have to get more out of Mo Salah. He's in his prime, and we're limiting his input on the game, because teams, again, much like off the ball, they know how to play us. They just know. They don't want the ball. They don't want to go toe to toe with us, and they are more than happy to drop into deep areas and just surround, because they know it's going to go back to Trent, and they know that Trent's going to put a ball into the box, and it gets headed away, and we're not good enough to pick up those second balls, because we don't have players that are just at the races on the second balls. You know, Milner's legs are gone. Harvey, to be fair, was good off the second ball, but you know, he's 5'7", 5'6". You know, he's not strong enough. He's not robust enough.
It's not a peak midfield where it was just three absolute athletes suffocating a team, was it? It
was, yeah. They would suffocate. That's exactly right. They would suffocate us in possession, and it would be repeat. It was like Groundhog Day at times, and that's why we bought Darwin. And obviously, it's going to take time, and I'm not too down on the whole
anger management.
I'm not too down on the whole situation, but you know, I think we need to switch up the system more dramatically. I think, and I think that that could be the next thing that comes.
Yeah, you'd hope so. It doesn't even have to be like a every game thing, but our plan B just seems to be 4-2-4 chaos, whereas a plan B that we usually do is 70 minutes onwards, whereas just tweak something at 30 minutes and see what the difference is, because that Palace game, we were in control till we went to 10 men, or till their goal, really. And then 10 men, it just kind of turned into chaos. But it's just stale, maybe the word for it, but it's been an imperfect start for the season for a reason, regardless of underlying stats and all that nonsense. But we've dropped 4 points, and that's the end of it. But the only reason we didn't drop another point is probably Luis Diaz, who, before we went to 10 men, was probably having a really quiet game. I was asking myself, what's he really done in this game? And then he skins 200 people and puts it in top bins, and then decides to basically be one-man mission, tackling people in our own half, dribbling past the team. But it's an odd one. I've only gone with a 7, whereas if someone who's rescued us, in my opinion, a point in a game we were struggling to get clear-cut chances, but that first 60-odd minutes or so, he was really quiet, so I don't think I can go too high in his rating.
Well, they had 2 right-backs on the pitch to deal with it. You know, it's that simple. As I said, you know, every time Robbo got the ball, they would shut down the ball into Diaz's feet and welcome it inside to Milner. So they knew what they were doing. What are our key dangers when you look at the team sheet of last night? It's Mo and it's Diaz. Yeah. So you double up immediately. I mean, you don't, on the right-hand side, you ideally don't want to send it back to Trent. But, you know, this you get what you get. But with Diaz, he just wasn't getting the service. He wasn't getting the link-up. And he got a Milner and he got a Darwin. So, and they gave nothing to him in terms of... So he had to create himself. You know, he you know, we saw this so many times with Phil Coutinho, where, you know, playing with maybe Lallana or whomever, sometimes you just have to get hold of the ball, and we shouldn't have to do that. We're too good to do that. We shouldn't have to be reliant on an absolute worldie. But Palace at home, it is what it is, I suppose. But he's brilliant. But again, I think he needs more from those around him. You know, because we're not going to be able to rely on that, because teams will get savvy to that, and it will be drilled into, you know, the next team. Do not let him shoot. Do not let him come inside. Whoever the holding midfielder for United is next Monday is going to be dropping in, and they'll just send him back to Robbo. So I think that was one of the only instances where it worked, because he kept going and going and going. And then eventually he got that yard of space to unleash a strike. It was brilliant, but it shouldn't take brilliance for us to score against Palace at home. It shouldn't. It should just take relentless pressure. It should take intricate play. It should take, we are just better than you, and we will just find ways through you. You know, I think if City played them last night, it's 5-0. And it probably isn't anywhere near the effort we put in. We just have to put in so much effort if we lose our controlling ballers. If we don't have that Naby or Thiago, we just lack so much potency in that middle. And it just affects our forward line so much, because they just have to drop into their wide positions again. And, you know, if you're Klein, you're pretty comfortable, because you've got Ward next to you, you've got is it Decore in front of you? You're just suffocating his ability, and it was his brilliance that I gave him a 7, because, you know, it was a tough performance up to them, because they were just so defensive. He just had nothing to do or nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think we maybe we're thinking he is the one who was so ready-made to replace what Mane was on the left wing. And he looks like a very different player, to be fair. I think we've obviously had the clutch moments so far, especially in that game. But Mane was just pure end product, where I think when we saw Diaz at his best last season, there was that spark of pace. Maybe it just wasn't all end product. He was maybe trying to get the best out of someone, whereas Darwin maybe is the idea to replace the goals. Diaz is just there to be maybe an outlet more so. But that is a moment of magic that has saved us from losing and being on 1 point to start the season. And I don't really care if he has a quiet 60 minutes, if he does that every game. But you're right in what you're saying. This is Palace. I mean, they played completely differently against Arsenal, but that was a completely new Arsenal front line, and they clicked quicker than ours so far, and they tortured them. I know Palace allowed them to be tortured a bit more, but we are better than Arsenal. I'm not that bloody negative so far in the season. We are better than Arsenal, and we need to prove it. And we haven't done so far. But Diaz, I think, what did he get from the listeners? He got a 7.5. So yeah, I think everyone's pretty much in agreement.
The thing with Mane was a player that could easily play in a 4-3-3 because he was an elite goal scorer from a wide position. Yeah. I don't believe that Diaz can get to that level. I think he's built for a 4-2-3-1 where he can come that little bit deeper and receive the ball a little bit deeper and actually run at players. He seems to be receiving the ball too high and he's getting followed. Whereas if we have that extra forward, if you like, it's like I want to see a 4-2-4. Remember that game against Arsenal a couple of years ago where we just went 4-2-4 for about 30 minutes and ran through them? That's what I want to see. I want to see more players in high positions. If they're going to play 5, let's play 4 forwards. Let's play, let's do that. This is the thing we have to do. We have to find the answers. We can't just keep on, we'll rerun it again. We'll rerun it again and rerun it again. Well, Diaz is playing too high, in my mind. He needs to be dropping 10 yards deeper and giving more support to Robbo, but also having that extra forward inside him, which would be your 10, who would dovetail with a 9. And I think that would suit his game better because, otherwise he's just getting caught out by being overloaded on one side and Mo's getting overloaded on the other. I'd love us to go get just a right winger and just put Mo in that 10 and just go, well, we can't get midfielder. Let's go get a winger. I don't know too much about this, Anthony. I see the YouTube hits, but at what point do you not just go get a player that can change, the rhetoric, which is how teams are coming up against us? Because it's not going to end. Teams are just going to low block the life out of us. So do you just go offensive or do you just continue to go 4-3-3, 4-3-3, 4-3-3?
True, and I think if you look at the teams in the league, I mean, who's going to try and go toe-to-toe with us? Man City? Chelsea? Yeah. No. So Arsenal.
Arsenal because they're Arsenal. And they'll try and play out. And then Bobby should play and then hound them and then we can pick up the second balls and then Diaz is fine. But everyone's going to low block us that isn't
City, Man United, Arsenal.
What, you don't think United are going to low block us? Yes, they are. Varane, Maguire, and the little lad from Holland.
Yeah.
That's going to be their back three. Then they'll have 2 full backs. Then they'll have McFred in the middle. Do you think they're going to come after us? I hope they do. But do you think he's going to risk that after last week?
I'm not sure. He does seem one that is set on playing this way, maybe overly stupidly.
Well, against Brentford, maybe, because maybe he didn't know about Brentford,
True.
But I don't see him coming for us. I think it's damage limitation already for United. I think they can't come for us. What, Maguire's going to push up? Well, they're not going to have the ball anyway, but you know what I'm saying? They're not going to put a back 4 against us when they've seen what back 5 did to us.
True.
Fulham caught us on the hop. Didn't see that coming, but I think I wrote something that you get the team that comes up, they carry that momentum. Leeds did it 2 years ago. Brentford did it last year. They carry that momentum, that intensity to overwhelm teams, regardless of who you are. But they just until they get slapped by someone. So that intensity carried from their championship-winning season. I just think, I think they'll come damage. Imagine what happens if they come for us. What we'll do to them. We'll tear them apart because Naby's going to play. Naby will play, and then Mo's going to play through the middle. Harvey's going to play that right-hand side, and then it's going to be Hendo on the right and Fab. And if they come for us, that will tear them apart because you'll be putting Mo right on Maguire's shoulder. And what's going to happen in transition when they lose the ball and they're 40 yards from goal? No. He will sit them block, and he will look to counter. It will be, it'll be a rerun because you just lost 4-0 to Brentford. Do you really want to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool?
If he does, he might have to go on the fraud manager list. But let's move on because, well, we'll have to discuss Man United next week, and hopefully it's much more positive. But in the starting 11, I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag so far, but we're certainly ending with a negative here. And Darwin Núñez, a stupid red card. The performance was a bit up and down, if you're being kind, before the red card. I think his movement was good. His link-up play wasn't very good, I don't think. Should have pulled the trigger instead of claiming for a handball, which could have been handball, but you still got to pull the trigger on the second shot. A brilliant tackle by Doucouré, to be fair, on his other chance, but it's just a joke. A debut that's compared to Joe Cole is never a good thing with the red card.
No,
that's the thing.
Well, I remember they asked him, "Where do you want to play?" and he said, "In the sausage roll." And I just thought, "Oh Christ!" But well, that was Argent Day. See, this is the thing. You know, you look back to that period, and it was dark and it was horrible. But the thing with Darwin is, and I was guilty of this, we've heralded him as the saviour for the past 7 days.
Yeah,
he's 23, South American, coming into a league that they're going to bully. They're going to try and get in his face. They're going to niggle him. He hasn't had that in Portugal. So Sebastian Fire, you know, and we've put so much pressure on his shoulders, and you could see, you know, he just needed. This could be the best thing that could have happened for him, to give him a little time out, to say, well, that couldn't have gone any worse, could it? So now you just reflect, you rebuild. That's not what you do. You now put Nat Phillips in training on him for the next 4 weeks, because Nat will just try and run through him in every training exercise. And you say that, well, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get guys like Nat Phillips run into the back of you. And that's what you've got to deal with. And you've got to be smarter than that. You've got to be, as Brendan would say, a technician, and you've got to be able to overcome that. You've got to be savvy. You've draw the defenders out into areas they don't want to be. You know, he was basically the equivalent of what Lovren liked to do with people like Troy Deeney. He wanted to get into a battle. You don't need to. You don't need to get in, because they want the battle. Lovren always wanted the battle. And Lovren would be drawn into areas, and he would do something stupid. Remember that game against, we lost 4-1 to Spurs, when Harry Maguire just dragged him onto the halfway line.
Yeah.
And Lovren was stupid enough to fall for it. Well, that was the striker's equivalent, where he was just dragged into a mindset where it was a fight. And it didn't have to be a fight. You know, players like Lionel Messi, Aguero, they didn't build their repertoire on fighting. Shearer did, Ferdinand did. Well, we haven't bought that type of player. We've bought someone to be decisive and intricate and a poacher in the box. You know, you don't see Jota you see Jota now and again leave a foot in, but you don't see him get into wars. It just seemed like Darwin needed, I don't know, it came too late, the arm around the shoulder, obviously, from Milner, but it needed guidance, and I don't think he had that around him. He seemed to be just caught out by some experienced centre-halves, and I gave him a 3.
I gave him a 0.
It's fair.
Yeah, them's the rules, I'm afraid. You get a red card, you get a 0, especially if it costs us the game like it did. We were building towards a goal, and then I know Diaz did the moment of magic, but it killed our entire attacking structure, as you say. It wasn't working flawlessly anyway, but it just made us go panic stations and overly cross the ball. And he'd be the one to benefit from the crosses. That's a big part of why we bought him, obviously.
Absolutely. But you might as well start Ricky Lambert or Christian Benteke out there, because I think he allowed that target. He allowed that. And as much as I want a focal point that, plays that bit higher against certain teams, you have to be able to drop in and link the play, and that's probably what he can't do just yet. And that's, we don't have a fluid front three. We just don't. I mean, you saw the latter part of last season where Mane was able to drop into different areas deep, but still offer a real deep threat against the centre halves. I mean, he was, what we needed in essence, but obviously it was too much to extend that contract. But Darwin just needs more to his game, because these low blocks are going to eat him alive. So he needs to be a bit more. I don't mind the anger and the aggression. Obviously, what came from the headbutt was stupidity, but you want that fight, but you need to be able to just shake it off, because he'll just become a target for everyone.
He really will. He really will. And we've already seen videos that are saying this is a 10-step guide to how to wind up Darwin Núñez and stuff like that. It's just, it's such a worry that I think Palace have one of the best centre-back groups outside of the bigger teams, to be fair, but there'll be bigger wind-up merchants than Joachim Andersen in the league. He wasn't one who I thought had a reputation for doing stuff like that. Like, imagine what Conor Cody will do, what Tarkowski will do when it's the Merseyside derby. Christian Romero is a horrible bastard. It's going to be a pain in the arse. And that will stick with him for years to come.
We need Diogo Jota back as soon as possible, so it gives Darwin that period to come into games, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and just, we have built him up this last week because we had to. Bobby wasn't good enough last week and Jota's not available. So we built Darwin up and put the pressure on him, and I think it all just consumed him. He knows the expectation that was on his shoulders. He's a young man that's going to cost potentially 85 million if he works out as we want. And we just needed him to be that carefree player that came on against City and came on against Fulham and just impacted. So I think, for this period where he's going to sit and watch could be a good learning curve for a young man in a new country.
Yeah, we need Jota back, so I'm guessing that's till the international break he's out, I think it's been said, so hurry up. But we need to win in the meantime. 0 for him. Off me. We'll do the subs collectively because we don't want to go stupidly too long. Gomez, I went with a 7 just because we saw the instant impact he had. We could actually play our system when he came on, albeit the attackers kind of just went rogue a bit. Tsimikas, I give a 3. He was dreadful when he came on, in my opinion. Carvalho, I give a 6, and Henderson, I give a 6. I think Carvalho tried to add something. He almost scored a worldie. And Henderson, almost similarly to Milner, in tougher circumstances because we only had the 2 midfielders. And to be fair, Palace didn't really go forward, but he did try to press higher. And Fabinho kind of just left doing defensive work when there wasn't too much to do. But Henderson, he didn't add loads, but he added urgency, might be the word. But yeah, the subs didn't make a huge impact, but Gomez, well, he looked fit enough to start against Man United. That's all I'll say.
Well, he just looked like a Liverpool centre-half.
Yeah.
He did nothing spectacular. He just looked like a Liverpool centre-half. He looked comfortable in the system. He looked comfortable carrying the ball. He looked comfortable receiving the ball. And there was a couple of moments where he had to turn on the afterburners and it was fine. It was dealt with. And it gave us the ability to then push forward again, because we seem to have a period of just, every time they came forward, you were just worried. So, I mean, I think if Nat Phillips stays on the pitch, he might get sent off. He was just flying into stuff. So to see Joe come on, and it's annoying to see Joe come on and play that well, and then you look and go, how is he not starting the game? How is he not starting? Is it overconfidence by Klopp? Because if you're coming on, if you're on the bench and you actually come on as well and play like that, there's no reason you shouldn't have started the game. Get the game won. and then get them off. We've got 5 subs. You wanted 5 subs. Get the game won and get them off. Klopp's not having a good couple of weeks here. I gave Joe a 7. I gave Costas a 5. That's a bad game for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think he did anything that was cost-worthy. I just think he had a bad game. I didn't really see the point in him coming. I'd have much rather seen Naby come on and just left Robbo on, because I think Robbo's performance would have increased by having Naby on the pitch.
Yeah.
So, and with Henderson, I think Henderson proved that he's better off the bench or as a starting 6 than he is as a starting 8. I think he comes onto the pitch annoyed because
he's an angry Mackham.
How dare thee? Where's my armband? I mean, what's all that? Just leave the armband where it is. It's a bit of fabric.
He came on for Milner, to be fair, so he could have swapped there.
Either way, he does it.
Yeah,
anyway. He comes and gets it, and he takes pride in it. Fair enough, the armband is the armband, but you're 32, and yeah, he did well when he came on, because he showed urgency. He showed a want to get involved, but he's on the ball. He couldn't give anything incisive. There was the odd Henderson cross or whatnot, but other than that, it was all pretty much in their half anyway. So Carvalho looked fine, but again, he's his child.
Yeah.
If we're looking to Fabio Carvalho to
rescue again,
get 3 points against Palace, I don't know about that, because I don't know. I don't know who Fabio Carvalho is. Is he a 10? Is he going to be, morphed into this wide player? I don't know what he is. I'd love it if we went with a 4-2-3-1 next week, where we had Naby and Fab in a 2, and we had Harvey on the right and Fabio in the middle and Diaz on the left and Mar up front. I'd love it. Why not? Why not? Nothing else is working. Why not? Because I think Fabio, he obviously played off Mitrovic, and he was able to orchestrate good things for Fulham.
Exploit space as well.
Now, we're not Fulham, but, he's obviously comfortable on the ball. He obviously wants to impact the game in a positive manner. And maybe we just really have to shake things up a bit. I mean, it's not going to happen, but how he's coming into the game before Naby, I just, if we don't want Naby, sell him and get someone else. We have a usable asset that can positively impact this game, and he sits there and doesn't come on.
Yeah, and I think we had a spare sub, didn't we? Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I don't know how many times we went to I think you can go 3 times. I don't know.
We had another sub, and we had another sub spot, if that makes sense. We had another time to make a sub. Yeah,
maybe Naby's just not ready. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, why is he on the bench? Just whack a youngster. We already had 3 on some of that as well. It's an odd one. It is an odd one. He's had an odd Liverpool career. But that's it, Stephen. I think that's gone well. It's your first podcast with me. How do you think it went?
Well, I've just moaned for, I don't even know how long we've been on. An hour?
Just over an hour, I think. Yeah. It's good therapy, isn't it?
I was quite positive at the start. I thought, no, I'm going to look, but I've just moaned for an hour about what we could have done, what we should have done, and I just don't know what we're going to do, because do we shake it up? Do we go? What do we do? We've got to do something in the market. We've got to be reactionary. I mean, has Nunes actually gone to Wolves?
It seems like he's having his medical by all accounts, I think. So, yeah.
So was Tchouameni once.
That's true.
I mean, we just Ginny. How has he ended up at Rome and not us? How has that happened? How much would you have loved to have seen Ginny in the team last night? There's just options. We can't just look within. We can't just keep looking within. Because Fabio's new. Harvey's basically new. Darwin's new. James Milner's old. Henderson's old. You know, we just have no middle ground. Where's the middle ground players? We either have old players that are susceptible to injury or just not good enough anymore, or young players that aren't ready. Where's these middle ground players that can just play, that can just come in and do 40, 50 games?
It is a worry. It is a worry. But hopefully, as we say, I'm not sure who will be my guest for the United game, but it has to be more positive. We have to win that game, and we have to win it well, let's be honest. If we sneak a 1-0 against the shit United team, it's going to feel like a lot. It's going to feel crap anyway. But, onwards and upwards, hopefully, because we're running out of points we can drop. It's already been enough. But that's it from me. That's it from Stephen. I'll be back next week for the United game, probably Tuesday again. I will sort my guest. It can't get any worse, people. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.